Hello, this is manic.mercurian with your birth chart reading. This reading will be for Tuesday, July 2nd, 1991 at 2:14 p.m. in New York City, New York, United States. So this means that you have Sun in Cancer, Moon in Pisces with Libra rising. And honestly, the first thing I really noticed that your chart, the first part of your chart that grabbed my attention wasn't the Sun, Moon, or rising. It was really the top of the chart. You have a lot going on at the top of your chart. All your personal placements, other than maybe the moon or rising, all those kind of inner planets are at the top of the chart. So Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter as well are packed into your ninth, 10th houses. Venus might be in the 11th house if we want to split hairs. I use equal houses, by the way. Hopefully that's okay. There are other house systems, of course, but but anyway, so having all these planets clustered at the top of the chart, that means that you probably have a very successful reputation. Like you would really shine. Any situation that has to do with public or getting attention. You're probably very excellent at handling attention. I don't know how you would feel about that. Because you have Sun in Cancer with Moon in Pisces, that would suggest to me that in actuality you part of you wants to stay private, part of you wants to stay hidden. You may have kind of like escapist tendencies that those are often associated with Pisces and Pisces moon. So part of you does want to shy away, and at least with part of your time you want to hide. But at the same time, again, combining all these ninth and 10th house placements, plus moon in the fifth house. Fifth house is kind of like party energy as well. So there's part of you that does want to hide away and is very reclusive and secretive and complex. But then part of you as well really shines very brightly. You have a lot of Leo placements as well with Venus, Mars, and Jupiter there. So yeah, part of you have kind of like a radiant personality, and Libra rising is a much different energy, but it makes you approachable. So I would really think that you have the potential for an excellent reputation. You may come across very likable, especially combining Moon in Pisces, Sun, Mercury, and Midheaven in Cancer with Libra rising. All of these placements are very non-threatening, so it means that you come across innocent. You come across other people find you comfortable to be around, and again, that may be kind of overwhelming for you because you may not always want constant stimulation and interaction necessarily, but others may not necessarily notice that or be aware of that with you. Others just find you very comfortable to be around. Two places I really looked at first in your chart are you have two really interesting conjunctions. One is at 27 degrees Cancer. You have Mercury, Midheaven, and Chiron all conjunct at that one same degree. So that's pretty wild. We'll talk a lot about that during the career and reputation chapter of this reading because the Midheaven has the most to do with career and reputation. But I will just say that again, it indicates you have a very powerful or very intense kind of reputation and public persona. You come across very sentimental but also intellectual at the same time, and you may have healing abilities that kind of come out with your career or reputation. Your public image is sort of complex. You're seen as nurturing. You're kind of a leader. You lead through emotion. You can kind of set a tone, set a vibe to public spaces. That's kind of your superpower, that you can not only can you sense and pick up other emotions in public spaces, but you can also project that outward as well. You can kind of control the feeling or the narrative there, I guess you could say. So not only are you a leader through emotion in public spaces, but with Mercury conjunct the midheaven, you're also seen as intellectual, intelligent. You're constantly kind of changing and learning and growing with your career and public image. And then also lastly with Chiron at that same area as well, you're also seen as a public healer. You're not just seen as these things, you truly are these things. You have the potential to heal other people through your career or your reputation. Not everyone will be comfortable with that energy because you will naturally bring things up for people. And again, this is all specifically centered around your career, reputation, public parts of your life. In those public spaces, you bring stuff up for people, like maybe difficult things, past trauma and wounds, Some people will really embrace that energy and they will feel so cleansed and so healed by your presence. Others will have kind of the opposite reaction. They will be, stressed out, insecure. They'll almost feel attacked by you when really you're actually not attacking them at all. You're bringing stuff up to heal for them. And this may not be anything that you're intentionally doing. It's just your presence, it's your aura, your energy that kind of does these things, if that makes sense. So, your actions may be a part of that as well, but part of it is just your energy. You bring things up for people to deal with. So again, we'll talk more about that in the career part of the reading, but that's a very powerful, very kind of unique situation there. Another pretty powerful and unique situation is you almost have another triple conjunction, which is pretty wild. Venus and Mars are loosely conjunct at 22, 24 degrees Leo, and Jupiter is pretty close as well at 14 degrees Leo. So this is a pretty big deal. My eye was definitely drawn there because Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, they all have a lot to do with desire and passion. They're all, three different planets. They obviously have completely different meanings, but there is that connection between, all of them do have to do with abundance and pleasure on some level. Venus and Jupiter in particular are the two benefics. They're the easiest planets to work with. So having those in Leo, which is so sunshiny and so generous and so warm, those are very, very powerful, especially because they're at the top of the chart. So Venus and Jupiter in particular in the 10th or maybe slightly 11th house for Venus. It just means these are more indicators showing a really successful career and reputation. Part of this success is that you just naturally enjoy yourself in public spaces, with your career, with your reputation. It shows that your chart suggests to me that you have a lot of fun in these areas, and that fun is tied to your success. So it goes both ways. It's not just that you are having fun because you're successful. You're also successful because you're having fun. So again, your chart is slightly contradictory because you have these slightly more introverted qualities, but at the same time, it looks like you really shine in the limelight. You feel comfortable there. It's kind of innate for you. It's that area. So I talked about Venus and Jupiter. I did kind of skip over Mars. Mars is slightly different from Venus and Jupiter because Mars is a malefic. It can be a troublemaker. But Mars has a little bit in common with Venus because both Mars and Venus have to do with what we want and how we get what we want. So having these two planets, which represent kind of different sides of desire and attraction, putting them both in this very public part of your chart, again, that just shows that your desires are irrevocably linked to your public image, your reputation, your career. You desire things in that area, if that makes sense. And you come across desirable as well, because again, it goes both ways. So you're successful, having all this desire and attraction, kind of coloring your public image and your reputation. It just shows a lot of success. I guess kind of what I was saying earlier, you have this really complex public image. You're seen as intellectual, but also emotional. You're seen as a healer. But you're also just generally seen as very attractive, very optimistic. Other people admire you in public and with your reputation. They envy you. They may project onto you because they see you as being very powerful. Part of that is Pluto in first house Scorpio as well. I did notice that too. And it's really interesting because with Libra rising, you naturally want to facilitate peace and harmony. You want to do what's best for the group and for other people. You may be very empathetic. So you kind of have this, it's a very mild and kind of slightly people-pleasing ascendant to have. But it's very interesting because Pluto's in first house Scorpio. That suggests that you also come across slightly intense, almost like a Scorpio. Part of that could be your water placements as well. With Sun, Mercury, and Moon, you do have a lot of water sign energy. But part of it is, any planet that's in the first house will kind of color the entire personality. First house is kind of the most influential house. It spills over into everything else. So because Pluto's there and Pluto's in domicile, you're, a millennial. Most of us have Pluto in Scorpio. But having that placement, it just means you come across intense or secretive, even if you're not necessarily even doing anything intense or secretive, others perceive you as such. They perceive you as, oh, you look like you have a plan. This person has an agenda. This person has some kind of, some trick up their sleeve, some kind of power. And again, maybe that's true. Maybe all that is true about you, and maybe not. Maybe you're just kind of minding your own business, but that's how people perceive you. So that can be very polarizing, and I think you may or may not be comfortable with that. Your Libra rising shows that you kind of want to be friends with everyone, but at the same time, because the Pluto is in first house Scorpio, that sort of indicates that it. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, I did say there is so much about you that comes across very attractive to others on a universal level, but at the same time, because Pluto is in first house Scorpio, that is polarizing. Not everyone will be comfortable with your presence, and that's okay because they're not meant to. You naturally just have a very strong energy that is very like visceral. It's very present. It's very available to everyone. So it's a strong energy, and so naturally people will have strong reactions to that. I also noticed South Node in the ninth house, so that's another major placement that's at the top of the chart as well. I'll talk about that in the next chapter, though. What else do I want to talk about here? I should kind of go back to the basics a little bit. So having Sun in Cancer, Moon in Pisces, a lot of water energy. These indicate that you're probably very creative, very intuitive. You may have psychic abilities. And you're very open to kind of strange ideas or unusual information. With Sun, South Node, and technically Mercury, well, depending on the house system, Mercury may or may not be in the ninth house or the 10th house. But what I'm getting at is Sun and South Node, at the very least, are in the ninth house. So that shows not only are you very much involved with like the public and the community and your reputation and things like that, but part of that may be sort of spiritual or philosophical for you, especially combining those energies with Moon and Pisces. You're interested in exploring like different feelings and vibes, different ideas and information. I see you as being very emotional, but also very intellectual as well. It's actually surprising to me. You may have heard me say this already, but having Sun and Moon both in water signs, I think for those of us studying astrology, we would expect those people just to be overwhelmingly emotional, right? But that's actually not the case. Not at least from my observations. I've noticed that people with Sun and Moon both in water signs actually come across very detached, very analytical. They can actually come across very dry. And I'm honestly not exactly sure why. But this may be true for you. You have this combination of being very emotional, but you can also be very detached as well. You can really oscillate between those two extremes more so than most people can. But with Sun in Cancer, Moon in Pisces, you're also probably very emotionally aware. When you do feel this emotion, it comes on very strongly, and you not only is it stronger and more visceral, but also there's more detail to it. There are more like shades of emotion. If other people like comparing emotions to colors, if other people just have like red, blue, green, you have like aqua and turquoise. I can't think of charcoal. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like you have this whole range of emotion that other people may not. That in itself, I think, can be very difficult. I think many of us want to shy away from emotion because it's unpredictable, it's uncontrollable, it's scary. Being so emotional makes us vulnerable, but at the same time, I really do think there's a lot of strength and intelligence there as well. And with your placements in particular, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Pisces, these are the two water signs that more so kind of wear their hearts on their sleeves, if that makes sense. So especially when you're feeling comfortable and secure, you probably are very comfortable expressing emotion, I would think. That's kind of my guess. But also, again, going back to the Libra rising, you are not just aware of your own feelings, you're very aware of the feelings of others as well. And you're sort of constantly making space for other people's not just feelings, but thoughts as well. So yeah, really interesting, really powerful career and reputation. That's like the biggest thing that really jumps out at me. But also you may be very nurturing as well. You may really enjoy helping others. You're just so aware. You may be painfully aware of yourself and of other people. So I could see you being sort of like a master psychologist. Um, I'll save that for the career part of the reading. I know I keep saying that, but thinking I'm going to go to the next chapter. Let's move ahead. Let's talk about your karma in this life. We'll talk about your challenges and potential, and somewhere in there, we'll talk about your upbringing as well. So I always like to start out with the South Node. North Node is at 18 degrees Capricorn in the third house, so that means South Node is at 18 degrees Cancer in the ninth house. So let's see. And South Node is loosely conjunct the Sun, depending on how wide of an orb we want to use. Okay, so with South Node in ninth house Cancer, to me that sort of paints the picture of in a past life you were someone who was like a matriarch or a patriarch, some kind of leader, especially someone who led through wisdom or spirituality or religion. So some kind of like clergy member, like you may have been a nun or a monk or priest, or there's all these words. I don't know all the words for the some kind of religious figurehead or some kind of spiritual figurehead. I could see you being a shaman as well. You know what I mean? Like there's all these different words, but it's more or less a similar role, right? You were some kind of mentor, some kind of guide. You were someone who knew a great deal of wisdom just about life in general, but also specifically about metaphysics, spirituality, religion, energies, God, the universe, whatever it is exactly. But that's, yeah, honestly, it's kind of clear. That's what I see you being. I see you being a sort of motherly or maybe fatherly figure. Someone who is, yeah, very wise, and you were a guide, a mentor, and very involved in your community. You're a public figure. The word celebrity doesn't necessarily come to mind. It's more of that kind of what I was describing of, someone that everyone in the community, they would look to you for guidance and for wisdom because they knew that you kind of had all the secrets of life or of the universe or what have you. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would usually like to talk more about that, but I think honestly that's pretty straightforward to me. The only other thing I could really say is that with South Node kind of conjunct the Sun, that sort of just emphasizes you being a very like strong figure in the community. That emphasizes that you had a lot of recognition. Everyone knew who you were, and that, well, South Node in Cancer makes me think of more of like a traditionally feminine figure, like nun or a woman shaman, I guess. Um, but South Node conjunct the Sun is more of a masculine energy, so it may have been sort of both for you. I do think we can be different genders in past lives, but yeah, you had a combination of being, I don't know, like you may have had both. How do I phrase this? Like, traditionally, like like paternal energy and maternal energy, kind of like motherly but also fatherly, if that makes sense. Like you were the community's father, you were the community's mother, you were the, I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. So coming into this life, it makes sense, that what I was just describing about your past lives, that should resonate with you now, because we tend to carry over a lot of that energy and information and skills. We carry those things over from our past lives into this life, and most of us, we repeat a lot of those same themes in this life. Of course, we do tend to also take on new themes. Some of us will really just explore pretty much the same themes that we have in other lifetimes, if certain themes take multiple lives to work through. So some of us are mostly just focusing on that. Others of us will completely go in a new direction in this life and focus on completely new themes. You know what I mean? For you, I do think there is a huge part of you still kind of dwelling on those same themes, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But how, because you have personal placements close to the south, that just indicates you're really holding on to that. And it also indicates that you're very comfortable with things that are already familiar to you. So it's really interesting. It's kind of both. I think part of you is very curious and inquisitive and wants to explore new things and new energies. But there may be an even greater part of you with Sun and Cancer close to the South Node. All of that indicates you cling on to the familiar. You're not ready to let go and completely explore new things. That's true to some extent for everyone, right? We all need some level of consistency and constants in our life. But I think for you especially, you really want that security. You may be very uncomfortable in new situations, and to me that's interesting because you have such a strong reputation. So on some level, you're very much able to put yourself out there and explore the outer world, which is dangerous. But you can do that. You can put yourself out there in that way. But at the same time, part of you does, I think, very much fear the unknown, if that makes sense. Or you may just be awkward or uncomfortable in new situations. So I don't know if that makes sense at all. But anyway, what I was really trying to say is with South Node in ninth house Cancer. So those themes that I was talking about being, that wise person that other people look to for advice, being that person that is so, emotionally aware and spiritually aware, that more or less applies to this life as well. You've carried that over into this life. You're still exploring those themes. The rest of your chart supports that as well. What's more difficult for you, though, is represented by the North Node. So North Node is in third house Capricorn. It's actually conjunct Neptune and to a lesser extent Uranus, and it's conjunct Lilith as well. I'm going to be honest, this is a tough one for me, but I'm going to do my best. So with North Node in third house Capricorn, it looks to me like you're learning more about grounding. Like it's great that you can be so aware of like feelings and information, like all these sort of non-physical things. I think you're very much at home there and comfortable there. Like, you're a master with emotion and things like that. It may be harder for you to like have both feet on the ground, if that makes sense, and to be grounded and, let's be realistic. Like, we don't, maybe things would be easier if we were just non-physical entities, but we are physical. We have physical needs and physical constraints, right? That may be very difficult for you to accept. Part of you just wants to be a free spirit and just to just go with the flow and go with your feeling, and all of that is well and good. I think that will very much serve you in this life, and it probably has. But at the same time, again, there is another side of the equation that may be less innately comfortable for you, less innate for you. So again, that would be North Node in Capricorn. So yeah, dealing with constraints, dealing with managing time, managing money, managing energy, even maybe even simple things like feeding yourself, or all these physical constraints may feel kind of foreign to you because I think you're just so aware of your spirit and of the non-physical side of reality, the non-physical side of yourself and of other people. It may be harder for you to feel like in your body and to to ground, to stay here like on earth in this very physical place. This is especially true because you generally lack earth placements. Yes, I can see Capricorn is pretty packed with 4 or 5 or 6 placements depending on what you count. There's a lot going on in Capricorn for sure. I definitely see that, but no planets in Taurus, no planets in Virgo, technically only 2 earth planets. So yeah, this may be very very difficult for you. It will get easier with time though, and just in case you're curious, every 9 years we tend to deal with this theme that I'm talking about. So the nodes that have to do so much with evolution and growth on a soul level, we're always dealing with those things, but especially every 9 years, because every 9 years the nodes will either return to the place they were at when we were born, or they will oppose and be kind of opposite. They'll be switched around from where we had the nodes when we were born. So at age 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, etc. Those are ages you may look out for, that you may have growth spurts during those times. During those ages you may realize that like sometimes in life we kind of go off track from what we are sort of working with or evolving. So I think it's especially at those ages I just listed, every 9 years, that we have this huge potential for sometimes realizing we're off track, and that can be painful. It can be difficult, a difficult process to get back on track, so to speak. But it can be very powerful, very exciting as well. And I don't usually go that much into all of that, into the nodes and the 18-year cycle, whatever you want to call it. But for some reason, I felt like I should share that with you. I think that might be relevant for you for some reason. So do with that what you will. I feel like that's important. But anyway, so yeah, and I will say too, your nodes, because you have Sun near the South Node and Mercury sort of near the South Node as well, you will have a harder time learning this particular lesson than most people. If it makes you feel any better, I have a similar placement as well. For those of us that have major placements around the South Node, kind of like I touched on it, it means that we're still holding on to those past life themes. If I'm being totally honest with you, it indicates that shit may have really gone down in a major way in your past life. So you may have been a very powerful figure. You may have changed a lot of people's lives. Maybe some huge kind of event happened for you in a past life, or maybe you just were really immersed in that life. Maybe you really enjoyed it, or really, had some other strong feelings about it. I can only speculate. I can't see exactly what the situation is. But that's why coming into this life, I just totally lost my train of thought. Something about coming into this life, that's why you still hold on to those past life themes. Right. So I guess I was saying that's what makes it more difficult for you to branch out. But you can learn, especially from people who have a lot of earth in their charts, that may be kind of foreign, but also refreshing for you, because the earth signs will have strengths that are opposite but complementary to your strengths, and vice versa. You may be very refreshing for them as well. I'll talk more about that in the compatibility part of the reading, but that does jump out at me because of the way your evolution and your soul growth is. It's really focused on earth. The earth signs are grounded, practical. They're slow to change, slow to react. They are deeply emotional, but they kind of keep that controlled, I think. So they can come across a little bit colder or drier at times, right? So yeah, Virgo, Taurus, or Capricorn, having people with major placements in those signs in your life may really be of a lot of help to you. Just being around their energy may really help you. And vice versa too. It's not just that they are helping you; you would help them as well, because you have more water in your chart. Water nourishes the earth. You have that connection to emotion and spirit that the earth signs so much crave and aren't necessarily as innately good at, if that makes sense. So it goes both ways. But I did just want to mention that. Okay, let's look elsewhere. We're talking about challenges right now, so let's just continue that and get that out of the way. So Saturn is another placement that has a lot to do with karma and challenges, but also potential. So Saturn really does have a lot in common with the nodes, I think. And you have Saturn not too far from the North Node. Saturn's retrograde in 4th house Aquarius. So, so to me, Saturn is in a completely different place than the rest of your chart, even more so than your Capricorn placements, in my opinion, because Saturn is your only air planet, and also Saturn is in the 4th house. The 4th house is sort of like the bottommost house. It has to do with home, family, foundation. It's the most private part of the chart. So that's why I say that Saturn, most of your planets, most of the activity, there's like a whole party going on at the top of your chart, right, in this public area that I talked about. But Saturn is showing that. I think part of that is because, excuse me, sorry. Part of this, so, okay, this may be a little bit difficult to talk about, but growing up, like Saturn, wherever Saturn is in our charts, it shows an area that we kind of lacked growing up. We didn't have a lot going on there. We didn't inherit anything in that particular area. So although that is very painful, it creates this opportunity for us to create that part of our lives for ourselves. So for you, with Saturn in 4th house Aquarius, Saturn in the 4th house indicates that when it comes to home, family, foundation, you may have not felt like you had those things at a young age. for whatever reason. Like you didn't have a place that you could truly be comfortable and just be vulnerable and be yourself. Like ideally, everyone should have a home, and that's what a home is, right? But you didn't necessarily have that, so that is, again, that is difficult. It's painful. It's kind of unfair, but at the same time, I do think that's part of why you are so excellent with the more public part of life, because that's just where that almost is your home in a way. It's kind of backward. But on another level, you do have this potential for creating your own home, creating your own family, being a leader in your home, being a leader with your family. This will take time, though. You are you're born 1991, so you're in your I'm totally spaced. You're like 29, something like that. I don't know. Um, my math, I think that's totally wrong. I'm 31. Oh no, you're older than I am. So you're 33. Okay, so yeah, so you may have gotten a lot of progress with this. You may have had a lot, because the reason why I was trying to figure out your age, usually in our late 20s, we go through our Saturn return, which you may or may not know about. Um, so you may have grown up a lot, at age 28, 29, 30. For you specifically, that would have to do with creating your own home, creating your own family, creating your own community on some level. Also, though, with Saturn in Aquarius, those of us that are part of that subgeneration, I'm actually part of that as well. Just in case you're curious, I have Saturn in Aquarius too. I was born in 1993. But so for those of us that have Saturn in Aquarius, we grew up not really knowing how to fit in with other people. So it's kind of an awkward little, a socially awkward subgeneration. Many of us either have social anxiety, or we just grow up not liking people, or with groups, especially Aquarius has to do with groups and public. So we grew up not knowing how to relate to other people, not knowing our role, maybe not feeling like we fit in, not what else? Just feeling different and strange. And you could argue, well, doesn't every young person feel like that? Sure, but especially though when you have Saturn and Aquarius, it takes us a little bit longer to figure out where we fit in with other people, what our role is, things like that. So I'm not sure if you relate to that. It is interesting because for most people with Saturn and Aquarius, I think that would be more of a public kind of issue. But for you, because Saturn is at the base of your chart, that social anxiety may actually have more to do with your family, or with the more close knit relationships. Like that actually may be where the anxiety, the fear, the absence has been for you, especially at a young age. So I'm kind of going out on a limb there. I hope that's accurate for you, but that's what I would speculate at the very least. Um, what else? Saturn being in Aquarius, air signs. It's another element that may be sort of foreign to you. Like I know you do have Libra rising, which is an air placement, but with only one air planet, it may be hard for you to, how do I put this? Like whenever we lack air in a chart, things become more serious, because air is the least dense element. It keeps things light and kind of just detached, and it's not very serious. You know what I mean? So not having those air signs in your chart in general, you may take things very seriously. Like you're very sensitive. There's nothing wrong with that. When you do something, you really put your heart into it. You put your feeling into it, if that makes sense. With all your water placements, you're so intuitive, so creative. It's hard for you not to just put your soul into everything that you do, and that's beautiful. But just like anything in astrology, that comes with a pro and a con. It comes with the cost of, you probably put a lot of pressure on yourself. So yeah, it may be difficult for you to open up to kind of being a little bit more detached. Not saying you have to do that necessarily, but that is one interpretation of Saturn and Aquarius. Learning to be kind of more like Aquarius, if that makes sense. Learning to be more detached, to view things just holistically in a very scientific or kind of like clinical way, if that makes sense. That would be very foreign from how you usually are, and that's totally fine. but that is one thing that you may struggle with from time to time. Let's talk about your upbringing a little bit. So for this, I really look to 2 points. That would be the South Node and the IC. You have South Node at 18 degrees Cancer in the 9th house, like we talked about, and then IC is opposite that. It's in Capricorn. So combining both of those, to me, that would indicate that you're probably very emotional as a child, very spiritual, maybe very psychic. You may have been very emotional, but you may have been very serious as well. It's kind of interesting combining Capricorn with Cancer. These are opposite signs, so you were kind of like a walking contradiction. You're like, on the one hand, you were very mature, very like sober, and kind of adult like at a young age, very responsible, and always thinking about the long term. And you may have had this kind of rigidness about you, yet at the same time you're also very emotional, very creative, much like you probably still are today. Creative, intuitive, probably had a very vivid imagination at a young age. And also you probably were already involved with like gaining some kind of recognition, some kind of being involved in public, getting attention. That may have started from a very young age as well. And Sun and Moon are pretty dang close to an exact trine, so that would suggest that your parents, there was some level of consistency in your upbringing. Your parents were consistent with how they raised you and kind of what their values were, what was expected of you. There was not a lot of uncertainty there for you. It was more or less straightforward. So that consistency and that simplicity, that's what has kind of created this confidence that is in you now, if that makes sense. Like that you don't necessarily have a lot of filters. It's more or less easy for you to know kind of what you feel and how you want to respond to any given situation. That comes from that consistency in your upbringing. What else can I say? So Saturn is in domicile, but it is retrograde, so that would suggest an absent father. Both Sun and Saturn can represent the father. Saturn to me definitely suggests an absent father, but at the same time, Sun is in a pretty high position. It's in the 9th house, which is a pretty strong house. So that would indicate a very present father. So both things can be true at the same time. It may have been complicated. Your father may have been very present sometimes, very absent other times. That's not necessarily unheard of for sure. And with your mother, I think it may be a little bit more straightforward. I think your mother was definitely involved with you for sure. And going out on a limb again, Moon and Pisces would suggest a mother that was very sensitive and creative, and kind of like Pisces basically. So someone who's intuitive and nurturing, and I don't know if that kind of checks out for you, but that's what I would speculate there. Okay, let's talk about your career a little bit. So I already kind of did dive a little bit into your career and your reputation, well, at least your reputation, because it just is a major part of your life, more so than most people, I think. Some of us just have a job that we do just because we need a job to support ourselves. I don't see that for you. I see you really shining in your career, in your reputation. Whatever you do, whatever your role is in the public, that you really shine there. You put your soul there, your emotion, your heart, your mind. You really put all of yourself into what you do professionally. So yeah, this is, it's not, I don't see you being satisfied with just having a day job. You're meant to do something that you really care about. And I was talking about how this is honestly pretty wild. So with Midheaven and Cancer, usually what I would say about that is, I could definitely see a lot of management material potential there. Management material, I guess you could say, because Cancer is sort of the mother sign. So not you have not only Sun in Cancer, but also Midheaven in Cancer. So that means you really come across almost like a mother at work or in public. And I think that can actually be really excellent for management, because the mother is kind of the manager of the home, so to speak. You're the manager of the workplace. You manage, you lead through emotion. Cancer is a cardinal sign, so Cancer is a leader, even though Cancer doesn't always seem like it. Cancer does lead through emotion. Cancer is kind of the expert sign at instigating through or with emotion, if that makes sense. So yeah, you may be a master of setting the tone, setting the vibe in your place of work, and especially combining Libra rising with Cancer midheaven. Libra is the most popular, most common rising sign to have, since you have Cancer midheaven. But anyway, that combination really shows that you are a leader, but you want to lead in a way that respects everyone else's free will. I definitely don't see you being the kind of person that is like shouting commands and dominating and desiring status and power. Day one. That's really not it at all. I see you as being a leader in a much more indirect way, a more, I guess you could say, feminine way, or a more receptive way, a more indirect way. I already said that, but you want to lead in a way that is more energetically efficient. So rather than just going out guns blazing, saying, "Hey, I'm in charge," I'm like, rather than having it be top down and very direct like that, you're a little bit more sneaky about it. You're very cordial. You may be very socially intelligent, and definitely very intelligent at picking up vibes and feelings from other people. So you may be very excellent when it comes to kind of like slipping in a way that fits with the energy that's already there. It's very important for you, I think, that you're never one to want to disrupt anyone else's energies. Part of you is very adaptable, I guess is what I'm getting at. But at the same time, I do think, because of these cardinal placements, you are excellent at asserting yourself. You are still asserting your own agenda. You're just doing it in a way that is conducive with whatever current agenda or energy there is. Does that make sense? So so it's a little bit complicated, but I really do see you as being a very excellent leader, excellent manager. With midheaven and Cancer, Cancer has to do with home and family. Midheaven has to do with your career and reputation, as I'm sure I've said. So often it can be as literal as, this indicates you may be very comfortable with working from home, working in other people's homes. I've known many people with midheaven and Cancer. I've known people who were architect, interior designer, housekeeper. I've known people who worked from home. I've known managers who did things that didn't actually have anything to do with home or family. But do you see what I'm saying? Either it has something to do with home or other people's homes, or something to do with management. Those are the patterns I usually see with midheaven and Cancer. For you, though, you are special because you have these placements near conjunct the midheaven. So it's not just about being a leader and dealing with emotion and homes. For you, it's much more than that. And I know I already said some of this in the intro, but with Mercury and Chiron conjunct midheaven, you're meant to take on a much more intellectual role. So it is very much about the emotion and reading vibes and all that. I could, like, for instance, I could see you being an excellent performer or musician. I definitely think you have some kind of creative or musical abilities. But also when it comes to like being on a stage and reading the room, reading the feeling the vibes of the audience and things like that, you would really thrive there. But whatever you're doing, it's not just creative or emotional, it's very intellectual as well. Mercury conjunct the midheaven makes that very clear. You're seen as not just wise but also intelligent. You are both, if that makes sense. You've got the deep wisdom, but you also have that what's the word? I feel like I'm trying to channel, but I'm not very good at it. You get what I'm saying. Like, you've got the right brain and the left brain. You've got the deep emotional wisdom, but also the more informational intelligence as well. You have both, and both are really present for your career and your reputation. And then also, again, Chiron there, you are healing other people, whether you want to or not, whether you are meaning to or not, whether other people want it or not. You are healing people. You're bringing stuff up for them to work with. So I could see this, honestly, I could see this going terribly wrong. Like, if you weren't aware of this and you were around people who didn't want to be healed, they could hate you for this energy. They would, you would make them extremely uncomfortable. And you might not understand that. You might blame yourself and go, why does everyone hate me? Like, what am I doing wrong? It's not that you're doing anything wrong. You're you're not doing anything wrong. It's more that I think it would just be very. I would I would be mindful, or I would just be mindful of that. Like, for the most productive situation for yourself and other people, I would put you around people who actually want to improve themselves, people who want to be healed. And that's why I say, like, I think the perfect career for you would be something psychological or clinical, maybe something healthcare related, but I would honestly lean more towards psychology, because that would check all the boxes that I just listed off. You could deal, especially like with families. I guess you could tie in that like home and family theme as well. But that would capitalize on your emotional intelligence, but also the informational intelligence as well. And then plus you'd be healing other people too. So I mean that would just check every box. I'm not saying you necessarily have to do that particular career to be happy. Or there are other careers you could be successful at. The other thing I could think of would be, like I already mentioned, being a performer, doing something creative or artistic. That could also allow you to heal other people through your career and through your reputation. You can heal people through music, through art, through some kind of performance. That would also work very well for you too, I think. um, what else would work? I'm sure there's some other careers that I won't think of during this reading. So, and I don't know what you do for work. I can't see that. So whatever you do, you can kind of, it's the themes that I'm focusing on, if that makes sense. It's not that I'm not here to guess what you do for work or to tell you what you should do for work. I'm just kind of going over these themes that you're working with. And so I want to encourage you to kind of apply that to your own life, apply that to careers that you've had or careers that you want to have. um, and kind of just ask yourself if it checks those boxes off for you. Because again, your reputation is complex. Your careers, the energy you're presenting is complex. It is multifaceted, and that's part of why you can do multiple things. But ultimately, I do think a career that checks off all these boxes would be the most fulfilling for you. But again, one last time, going back to Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, all near the 10th house, near the top of the chart. Whatever you do with your career, you will probably be very successful at, especially if it involves other people or attention, publicity. Um, so there's that as well. Ideally, I think it'll be something that utilizes your emotional, just your intelligence in general. You have kind of every kind of intelligence. Something that capitalizes on that and your healing abilities, I think, would be the best. But also anything involving dealing with people or groups of people, I think you'll really shine. Other people will enjoy you there. Um, Honestly, this chart, it wouldn't surprise me if this chart was the chart of a celebrity. Like if you did have some kind of celebrity status, I would not be. Actually, if anything, I've read celebrities' charts recently that, they're like your chart looks like more of a celebrity chart than actual celebrities' charts that I've read recently, if that makes sense. Um, so, so just that's part of it as well. Okay, lastly, let's talk about your romance and compatibility. I'll go through all the signs. Usually I go through by element and just talk about your dynamic with all of them. And I will talk about my favorite signs for you. I'm kind of realizing that yours will actually be pretty simple, pretty straightforward, I think. But I'll talk about how I see the ideal relationship playing out for you too. So for much of this, I look to Venus, Mars, and the descendant. I always preach this. I always say this repetitively in my videos because I don't know. I'm very confident. Venus, Mars, and the descendant. These are the three main placements that have to do with what we're attracted to and what we're compatible with as well, romantically. So you have Venus in Leo, Mars in Leo. Venus and Mars are both conjunct in Leo, and then descendant is in Aries. So the commonality is that you have all three of these major compatibility placements are in fire signs, specifically Aries and Leo, which they have a lot in common. So in other words, it's very straightforward what you are attracted to and what you're compatible with. astrologically, I would really say it's the fire element. You need someone fiery, someone passionate. If they don't have fire in their chart, I don't understand really how they would work with you romantically. It's that simple. Um, it's interesting because in some ways you are very much opposite fire. So, for instance, like you are much more adaptable, go with the flow. You're very deep feeling, very like cool and deep, but also just very receptive and just like I said, go with the flow. You can be like easygoing, and this is all pretty much the opposite from the fire element. Fire is much more intense and very easily affected by by its environment, and fire is the most passionate. So you have these huge differences. I think these differences will attract you to each other. Um, but also you do have a fiery side as well. With Venus and Mars in Leo, this shows that especially when it comes to romance and attraction and sexuality as well, you can be very passionate. You can be very forthright, very direct. With Venus and Mars in Leo, they indicate that you're very confident about what you want, and you're confident about how to get what you want. And likewise, you may be very attracted to confident people as well. You're attracted to people who are upbeat, warm, outgoing. At least, this is all speculation on my part, right? But that's what I would speculate. Like, you need someone fun, energetic, someone decisive, someone who really knows what they want, someone who is a little bit like very straightforward, and actually kind of someone who views the world in a kind of simplistic sense. I think you would be much more nuanced. You're more complex. Your mind is more of a bureaucracy of different like feelings and thoughts, and it can be very complicated and convoluted. I think what you need is someone who's much more just simple, straightforward, decisive. Someone who sees the world more in black and white terms. Either someone with major Aries or Leo placements would very much fit what I'm describing. Someone adventurous, probably someone else who makes the first move. With combining Libra rising with your water placements, like I said, although you have this really stellar reputation, I think you can actually be a little bit shy sometimes. So I really think you want someone else who's more confident about putting themselves out there and initiating. I think you'd prefer the other person to initiate, because part of you wants to be very receptive and facilitating the other person's intentions, feelings, thoughts, etc. So that's why I think you would match up so well with really strong personalities, really outgoing personalities. You also have a strong personality, but it's much more like inwardly focused. But I think being around these strong personalities will bring out that it'll bring out that in you as well, if that makes sense. With Venus and Mars and Leo, you do have a very strong personality, especially in the sense that like you're not going to change yourself for anyone else. You have the philosophy of, if I'm attracted to someone, I'm just going to go out there, I'm going to be myself, be super raw and authentic. If it matches up with them, great. And if it doesn't, at least I know, right? That's it's just it comes across very confident, very forthright, very authentic, very raw. So that's how I see that working for you. With Venus and Leo, you are in love with love. I think I read that somewhere. But yeah, you love falling in love. You love the passion and the drama of it. You may be attracted to personalities that are a little bit more dramatic, or like I said, energetic, passionate, etc. Fire signs, like many actors are fire signs, for instance, because they're so personable, so reactive, and so relatable. They're so endearing. The fire signs can be very charismatic. They can be very alluring. So I really think that's what you're into. Someone confident. I think I covered all the basics there. So astrologically, Leo and Aries are easily my top picks for you. Leo and Aries both have a lot in common. They're both the more instinctual fire signs. They're both the most confident, most energetic. They can be very much self-centered, very impulsive. They have that type of energy more than any other sign in the zodiac. Sagittarius is another fire sign. Sagittarius does have many qualities in common with Leo or Aries. Sagittarius is also adventurous, upbeat, optimistic, impulsive, They can be decisive, but Sagittarius is a little bit different because they're mutable and they're also intellectual. So Sagittarius is going to be a little bit more analytical, a little bit more dreamy, a little bit more detached. You may relate to Sagittarius a little bit because of your Pisces moon. So they will also be, you are kind of dreamy, and you can have a detached side to you. So you may relate more to Sagittarius, but I think that would actually make you more of friends. I think for Sagittarius to work with you romantically, they're gonna need some other fire placements as well to make it more like romantic or sexual, I guess. Sagittarius on its own, I see more as I think they have some of what you need romantically, but they also have a lot in common with you, which may sound really nice. But my philosophy is that the more two people have in common together, the more likely they are to be friends. If you have too much in common, it's gonna feel too comfortable, if that makes sense. There's no tension, there's no passion, there's no excitement because it's just very familiar and easy. Does that make sense? So Sagittarius may be slightly on that side of things, compared to the other fire signs. Aries and Leo will be more exciting, more passionate, more it'll be more opposites attract with you, if that makes sense. More like yin and yang. Technically they would be yang, you are more on the yin side. So yeah, Sagittarius, it really depends on what their other placements are. If they have, like, let's say Sun in Sagittarius, if they had Moon in Leo, I could really see that working romantically. But if they have Moon in a water sign, they would have just a lot in common with you. They'd be friends. So it kind of depends. So yeah, it's not usually that simple for me to assess someone's compatibility with their charts. Most people have Venus, Mars, and the descendant in at least like two or three different elements, right? It's more rare for them all to be in the same element like that. So that is straightforward. So I'm not as in love with Sagittarius as well because I don't see you necessarily wanting someone who is super analytical. Like I was saying, you already see so many different sides to reality. Your reality is already complex. I don't think you need that in someone else. And Sagittarius, again, they have more in common with you. They also see many different sides to things. I don't think you actually want that. I think you need someone simple, straightforward, to the point. You're gonna get that with Aries or Leo. Um, let's just go through the other elements kind of briefly. So Earth signs are interesting because what I mentioned before. Your North Node is in Capricorn, so Earth signs will ground you. I think Earth signs will play a very important role in your life. I don't see them being romantic though, unless they have a lot of fire in their chart. It's really all about the fire when it comes to that romance for you, astrologically. Without fire, just looking at the Earth element, yeah, I see them being kind of a mentor or a guide for you. I could see you having a very deep or kind of karmic relationship. Especially like a friendship or a family member, if they have strong Earth energy. Particularly Capricorn or Taurus. I don't know how you would relate to Virgo. You don't have a lot of detached placements in your chart. Like air signs, Virgo, Sagittarius. These are all more kind of detached, and there's not a lot going on in those signs. So that's why I'm not sure how Virgo would be for you. Virgo is so analytical. Virgo is so hyper aware of physical reality that I think they may be very different from you. So for you and Virgo, both of you will have to be very mature and very whole within yourselves to have a close knit relationship with each other, if that makes sense. You're gonna have slightly more in common with Taurus or Capricorn because Taurus and Capricorn are more instinctual. They're a little bit more in touch with themselves instinctually compared to Virgo. Virgos give you more detached, more analytical. Um, Looking at the water signs I see as being friends for you more than any other element, because I see you as relating to water signs more than any other element. So whether it's Cancer, Pisces, or Scorpio, you will relate to them. You speak the same language. You have the same needs, the same wants. You have the same communication style. It would just be very straightforward, very easy for you to be around fellow water signs. That could be part of a great romantic situation, especially if they have other like fire placements, right? But just water placements on their own, I see as being very comfortable. I see that being a great friendship or family relationship for you. Scorpio may be slightly different. I would actually be aware of Scorpio. Well, actually, for your chart, it might work. Usually, I would always say to be cautious when combining one person who has a lot of Leo placements with another person who has a lot of Scorpio placements, because Scorpio and Leo can be very attracted to each other, but they have dramatically different needs, and it can be a very tumultuous relationship, and it can be very hard to break off because both are so stubborn, both are so committed. So usually I would caution against that. However, because you have so much water in your chart, the Sun in Cancer, Moon in Pisces, Mercury in Cancer as well, um, you may actually really enjoy Scorpio. Scorpio has that fiery side to their personality, but they also are a water sign like you. So they have what you want, but they also would relate to you a lot as well. So that actually could be a very interesting sign for you. Um, let's see, but yeah, it may be contentious still though if they have, especially if they have placements around 22 or 24 degrees Scorpio, because then they will square your Venus and Mars. One thing I should mention too, so part of why Leo and Scorpio usually don't work as well is because Leo wants a lot of room to be free and to be themselves. They want a lot of independence and freedom, and they want that for their partners as well. Leo does want a committed relationship, but they also want that kind of distance as well. Water signs, Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio, they all want a much more close knit relationship generally. They want, to be very touchy feely, lovey dovey. They want that security. They want to know that their partner's going to be reliable and to be there for them. So they're a little bit more possessive, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's why Leo and Scorpio usually don't work together. But because you have so many general water placements, but then Venus and Mars, and Jupiter in Leo, you may actually be kind of I think for you, you want a balance. You do want a really close knit relationship, but you also want room to be playful and to be adventurous as well. So because of that balance, I guess, in your chart, I could see you actually working with Scorpio. um yeah, Scorpio may be a little bit more romantic for you. But Pisces and Cancer in particular are going to be, you may have very strong connection with them, feel very close to them. I see Pisces and Cancer as more being friends unless they have those fire placements. um yeah, Scorpio could kind of go either way. Earth signs, earth and air signs, you generally lack a little bit more so they're going to feel a little bit more foreign. That can be exciting because you have different strengths. You can balance each other, you can complement each other. But it can also be more difficult because you have dramatically different needs. So I already covered the earth signs, but the air signs in particular, I really think you lack air energy more than any other element. You do have the Libra rising, so you may come across as detached and easy breezy, and everything's light and nothing bothers me. You come across that way, but deep down you're actually deeply emotional. So air signs, yeah, I think when we lack an element, we can attract people of that element, especially when we are in a really open or kind of adventurous phase of our lives. It can be very exciting being with someone who's so different, but it can also be it tends to be difficult to maintain because you're just so dramatically different. The major difference between you and the air signs is that air signs are the least emotional, water signs are the most emotional. Fire signs can be pretty emotional too. So and you have mostly water and fire energy, in my opinion. So yeah, it may result in a lot of misunderstandings between you and air signs. They're not really comfortable with emotion. You may be very aware and very comfortable with emotion. So you may be uncomfortable with their relative lack of emotion, and they may be uncomfortable with how emotional you are, if that makes sense. You just have dramatically different needs. I think, again, you're really attracted to someone more primal, someone very instinctual, very much in touch with their own desires and feelings. Air signs are the opposite of that. They don't really know how they feel. Their feelings are kind of fleeting. So yeah, I think that would be generally an awkward situation for you. With that exception of in the right situation with the right air sign, it could be really passionate but difficult to maintain. But generally speaking, though, you have too many differences. It's going to be too difficult, generally speaking. Yeah, but that's that's what I've got for your reading. This was a pretty interesting one. Definitely let me know any questions or feedback that you have. I'm always willing to, continue this conversation. And any feedback you do give me, it helps me to improve as well. Because to be totally honest with you, I don't know if anything that I'm saying is true unless you validate it. And you definitely don't have to. But if you want to, I'm here. Anyway, but thanks for this reading request. I hope that this resonates with you. I hope it helps you or was interesting. But thanks so much and have a great day.